Welcome, everybody. Before we get rolling, can everyone please take out their cell phones and put those cell phones in airplane mode? We will be live streaming the event tonight, and having all of us with our phones in airplane mode just improves the quality of the live stream. So welcome to everybody who's here. Welcome to everybody who's watching it at home in their pajamas. I think last night we had 70,000 people worldwide tuned in. It's really quite extraordinary. So it's really wonderful to be able to have people come and be live together. It gives us this picture that we'll be able to be like this for parent evenings and for the high school coffee house and for the rose ceremony and, of course, for the class of 2022 graduation ceremony on Saturday, June 11th. So this is a good sign. Talked a little bit about this last night, but just wanted to those of you that weren't here last night, we feel really great about the Waldorf curriculum, particularly the Waldorf high school curriculum, the way each age, 9, 10th, 11th, 12th grade is met with a curriculum that really speaks to the developing human being. But what you can't take into account is the individuality of each student. And that's why we love these senior projects so much. Those of you that watched last night got to see 50% of the class of 2022 and how completely different each project was, each approach to presentation, and really got a chance to see within this class all of the unique qualities. And so tonight we'll get to see this other half, 7 students, and then lots of opportunities to ask them questions. And then we've got them for a couple more days, and then in keeping with this uniqueness of the senior year, we will lock and bar the schoolhouse doors to them for 3 weeks as they go out into the world of work and do their internships. And so maybe before you all head out tonight, ask them, what are you doing for your internship? Where are you headed? What are you going to learn? So, because they've got really neat things lined up for that. So, just a reminder, each student will come up here. We won't come up here again until the very end. Each student will come up. They'll have 10 minutes to present, and then there'll be 5 minutes for everyone to ask everything that, all the questions that you want answered, and then that student will introduce the next, and we'll just keep rolling. So I think, without any further ado, let's get going. Who's this? So, I get to introduce the first one. It is my great pleasure to introduce Mike Willard.
Hi everyone. My senior project was creating a desktop computer and a web-based assignment organizer. Here's the game plan for my presentation about the project. These are some steps I chose, or these are some steps on why I chose this project. Number 2, major requirements, like some parts and knowledge I needed to know before taking on this project. Number 3, project goals, an outline of what I want to do over the course of this project. Number 4, building the computer, about my time taking apart and putting together this computer. Number 5, the homework tracker. This was an extra step in my senior project process. The project, I've always wanted to build a computer, even when I was younger, so it only made sense that I would build one for my senior project. These are some important parts inside a computer. The motherboard is sort of like the backbone to any computers. It's what sends out and receives information from devices, and it's what most of the inputs are connected to. A GPU. GPU stands for graphic processing unit. The GPU is a specialized electronic component that is designed to rapidly manipulate and alter memory to accelerate like the creation of images and process high-performance data processing assignments. The RAM. RAM stands for random access memory. But what does that mean? Your computer RAM is essentially short-term memory where data is stored and pulled to different places as the processor needs it. The CPU. This stands for central processing unit. The main processor, the central processor, is electronic circuitry that executes instructions comprising a computer program. The case, a computer case, also known as a computer chassis, is the enclosure that most of the components inside the computer it protects. I purchased my case for my computer for $50 on Facebook Marketplace. This also included my motherboard and other peripherals like a power cord and power supply. About CPUs. The form and design of CPUs and their implementation has changed over time, but their fundamental operation remains almost unchanged. Principal components of a CPU include a arithmetic logic unit, which functions in ones and zeros and does simple math problems. A CPU performs most tasks that a computer uses in everyday life, like basic web browsing and watching movies. A core or a CPU core is sort of the brain of the CPU. It receives instructions and performs calculations. There can be multiple cores in a computer and in a CPU, and those are called dual core processors. GPUs. Modern GPUs are very efficient at manipulating computer graphics and image processing. Very similar to a CPU, except for they're far greater and they don't perform as many tasks. They're used for more high-end data transformation and data like sifting through large data blocks. In a personal computer, a GPU can be present on a video card or embedded on a motherboard. When embedded on a motherboard, it's called integrated graphics. These are common on some older machines and are significantly less powerful than a dedicated graphics card. About hard drives. These were some hard drives that I put into the computer. Hard drives are storage devices that are located inside the computer. A hard drive is a hardware component that stores all your digital content, whether that's documents, pictures, music, hard drives, programs, video games, whatever you have on your storage on your computer. Hard drives can be external or internal. About RAM. RAM gives applications a place to store and access data. It stores information in your computer so it can be so that your computer is actively using, so it can be accessed quickly. That is what a CPU would pull information from and send to it to store for short times. About motherboards. A motherboard is the main circuit board in a computer. Think of it as almost like a nervous system where in a human body where it sends information and it just talks to the different machines. And that, as you can see, is sort of where most of the important parts are located in a computer. The computer. This is my computer, the one that I built. Let me grab it. This is just the outer case. That's not as cool as the insides. It's the guts of the computer. Here are some of the insides that I pulled apart and put together. Up top is the power supply. Where this fan is located, that's where the CPU is. Underneath this giant thing that used to be a DVD player is where the GPU would be located. Here's where certain information, like the storage device. There was a DVD that originally came with this case. I pulled that out because I didn't have any use for it and actually used that for extra storage. I was able to put a terabyte storage device in there. That was like the main thing I had to work around, trying to fit that into the computer due to the size of the chassis. It has a very small form factor, so I was limited on what could fit into the computer. Part 2, this is the assignment organizer. Here are some of the steps I took in this process. Creating a web-based assignment organizer. The purpose of this project was to create an open source website that'd be able to universally track student homework assignments across multiple assignment platforms and classes. A lot of Python coding is used for web development, and it's fairly easy to learn. This was my first time learning any sort of like programming or anything like that. So I chose this one mainly because it was easy to learn and was super useful for web development and designing these sort of things. This right here is the actual website that the information was stored on. My main goal with this was to be able to pull information from stuff like Google Classroom, which is where we moved most of our assignments onto after the pandemic happened. And my second part was merging some college classes I was taking that used Brightspace and moving those assignments into one easy-to-use platform that wasn't murkied up, because I had a hard time managing through clicking on each assignment and finding all the nitty-gritty stuff. So my goal with this was just create an easy-to-use website that I could find all my homework based on priority and the time it was due. Here were some challenges I faced during this project. Limitations due to the size of the chassis and mini ITX motherboard. I had some hard times fitting GPUs and other big parts into the chassis due to just the size of it. So I had to sort of work around that. Computer not running after adding components. This happened a couple times actually. My first time was just trying to put in a bigger storage than the 256 gigabyte it came with. And those just wouldn't boot for some reason. It was really a big hurdle I had to go over. My second part was when I installed a GPU into it, it just wouldn't turn on. Wouldn't tell me it failed or anything, so that was a little nerve-wracking. I was able to solve this issue by disabling the integrated graphics that was on the motherboard. Python rejecting elements of my code. Python is very strict, and if you make like the slightest spelling error or you mistype something, chances are the program won't run. And the error messages it would give you, were very unhelpful, and they didn't really tell you what it was most of the time. So it took a lot of just sifting through and pulling out elements of it. Missing element of logic within my script for my project. I had a lot of assignments I had to sift through, and without an element of it saying, hey, this is the same thing, it would copy and paste 50 times. So I had to use some if-then logic, like if this is already pulled over, do not send it again. That was a little bit of a hurdle I had to go through. Google Classroom not showing new assignments. A lot of the times the page wouldn't refresh, so the new homework assignments wouldn't pop up. I was able to fix this by adding a generic page refresher to the script. Future. I'm definitely going to work on computers in the future, as well as Python coding. For this computer alone, my main goal is to get rid of some of the loose wires that could be a fire hazard. There was a lot of loose wires after pulling out the DVD player. So, and definitely I'm going to use Python coding in the future. It was such a cool thing to learn, and I think it will help me later down in my career. I'd like to give a special thanks to Noel Stoddard and Noel Stoddard and Eric Molke. They helped me a ton with my project and my slideshow. Yeah. Mr. Shahan.
So in the original and remake movies Tron, the premise is that there's people writing code and doing Python become represented in the code itself, in the game, in the computers themselves, right? There's a theory that like there's a part of you that's in that code and
I think no one will truly know. It's an interesting idea, though.
Have you seen either the remake of the original drawing?
I have not. So,
Do that, and then we can talk.
okay. Were there any other questions? Mr. Barham.
So this question seems kind of boring, actually, after that question. But I just wanted to know, do you see yourself as using this program that you made, this homework program, for college level work as well? Will it help you in the next years of your study?
I think so. I think the way I built it for, it wouldn't be just for me. It could also be something a teacher could run. That was the main thing I shifted towards due to the restrictions I had within the Google API database. I had a hard time accessing a lot of the bulk homework due to my privileges. I was an administrator. So I almost made it so that a teacher could run it, since they're the admin of their Google Classroom and that, or their Brightspace, and that's where it would be marketed towards, and then they could supply that to their students. Hi. I had a couple scripts I pulled together. I used an HTML parser, or like a website scraper, to pull the information from the API, and I would connect that to a parser that would send information from the Google Sheet to the website. Yeah. Hi, Ella. My favorite part was building the computer. Within that, I think that my favorite part was seeing it actually turn on when I was done with it, because that was sort of a big issue where I would keep messing with it, pulling stuff out, and then it just wouldn't turn on. Yeah. Up next is Wesley Teegarden.
All right. My name is Wes, and this is my senior project, Reviving a BMW. All right, so before I jump into what I did, I'm just going to run over the anatomy of a four-stroke engine and how it works, because it's pretty crucial to understanding what I actually did in my project. So I have a list of terms that are good to know. The first is a head. There are two main parts to an engine. There's a block and a head, and they're split right about there. So above is the head, and that's where air comes in, exhaust goes out. That's where the valves are. That's where the spark plugs are. And below is the block, and that's where the majority of the cylinder is. Next are valves. These are these green things, and they open and close at the specific times to let air in when it needs to be let in, and let exhaust out when it needs to be let out. Intake and exhaust. I'm sure most of you know exhaust is the gases put out by the combustion, but why I included this is because I'm going to be referring to like the intake manifold and the exhaust manifold, and those the intake manifold is the manifold responsible for getting air into the engine, and likewise the exhaust getting exhaust out. Gasket. Gasket's just a fancy word for a seal, basically. So, like we just learned head, and a lot of people hear the word head gasket, and they're like, okay, yeah, that's a car thing. I don't really know what it means, though. But that's the seal in between the head and the block. And finally, camshaft. These are these purple lobe things you see here. It's a long shaft with a lot of these lobes spinning, connected to the drive shaft. And as you can see, when that pointy part of the lobe comes, it pushes the valve down. So the camshafts are what are responsible for timing those valves. So my car is a 2002 BMW 325 Xi. I bought for $900 off a guy on Facebook Marketplace. Has 220,000 miles and a blown head gasket, or it did. And so my first step of this process was diagnosing some issues. For a little bit, the guy who sold it to me, he said it had a blown head gasket. and I was optimistic for a little bit. I said, well, maybe it's not that. Maybe it's something less expensive and time-consuming. So I started off by pulling out the spark plugs, as you can see here. And as you can see, they're pretty sooted. They're really black, and they're not supposed to look like that. I knew that something was burning inside the cylinders that wasn't supposed to be burning. And also something that was pretty apparent pretty quickly is the battery that's for some reason located in the trunk was kind of shot. The next step was the valve cover gasket. After some internet research, a possible reason for like oil burning in the cylinder, and a common problem in these cars is a valve cover gasket. So we just learned the gasket's the seal, so that's the seal in between the valve cover, which is, if you can see that plastic thing, it's just basically the plastic cover of the engine that goes on top of the camshafts and keeps oil inside. So if that's bad, if that's leaking, then it'll be leaking oil onto the engine bay or into the actual cylinder through the spark plug holes. Over here you can see there's like some kind of burnt rubber residue, and so it's definitely a good thing. The rubber was pretty brittle too, so it's a good thing I was changing that. So after a visit from my mentor, Mr. Lee, I decided, you know what, the guy said it had a blown head gasket, and it's my senior project. I might as well make a project out of it. So the next step for me was removing the intake manifold, because there's a lot of things connected to the head that you have to remove before actually removing the head. So the intake manifold is basically this, it's kind of hard to see, but it's this piece of plastic right here. And that was a pretty time-consuming process, especially the first time. I've done it like 4 times by now, but the first time it was pretty time-consuming because there's a million electronically controlled valves that are actually on it that you have to take out. And my car is port injection, which means the fuel is injected into the air before the air actually goes into the cylinder. So all the fuel injectors and the fuel systems connected to the intake manifold, I had to take that off too. And there's also a million electronic sensor connectors that came from that intake manifold. So this is what the engine bay looks like without the intake manifold. You can just kind of see there's like this whole area over here that it used to be. And you can see it's really gross, just really grimy, definitely leaking oil before. Not supposed to look like that. These are like the ports where it connected to the cylinder head. So it was definitely a good thing that I was kind of rebuilding this, because it was definitely doing some things wrong. So the next step was taking off the timing and the Vanos system. The Vanos system it just uses oil pressure to increase fuel efficiency at low throttle inputs and power at high throttle inputs. And that's just this little system right here. That was pretty simple to remove, actually. Just a couple bolts. And then the timing system. This is admittedly not my picture, but I lost the pictures I have of it. And that was actually, it wasn't necessarily difficult, but it was, you just had to know what you were doing and have your head screwed on straight when you were doing it, because there's a lot of like really specifically torqued and positioned cogs, and it's really important that that is taken apart correctly and put back together correctly, so that your timing for valve openings are good and your engine doesn't blow up when you start it again. And there is a specific kit for making sure that all went smoothly that I had to buy as well. So the next step after that was taking off the exhaust manifold, and that was a problem because the bolts that bolted it to the head of the engine were rusted to the point of fusion, and just I couldn't get them off. I tried to hit them with PB Blaster, it didn't really work. So with the recommendation of my external mentor, Jeff Rittmeyer, I decided that I was going to disconnect it from the exhaust pipes underneath the car and then pull the intake manifold out with the head when I took the head out. So there was another problem though, and that was that those bolts down there were also rusted to the point of fusion. So I managed to I guess the video doesn't want to play. I managed to cut those bolts with an angle grinder, as you can see in that middle, what's supposed to be a video. But there were 2 more that were really hard to get at, and I wound up, trying to use a hacksaw blade, didn't really work, and I wound up using this Milwaukee tool that I had to grind down narrow enough to get into where it's supposed to be. And this is just the exhaust system outside of the car. So this is after I pulled the head out. There's the head on the bench in my garage and kind of the engine bay without the head. So it gives you a good look at what the top of the block looks like, and you can see all the cylinders. So that was really cool. And this is a closer look at the surface of the block and the head gasket itself. The head gasket, and you can see it's just really like crusty and gross. Definitely, because that's supposed to be a really tight seal, and you can tell that just things were going wrong there. So the next step was testing for warping. When a head gasket is not operating properly, oftentimes engines can overheat, and that can warp the aluminum head. And if the head is permanently warped, when you go to put it back on, it's not going to seal to the gasket properly, and it's going to be a giant mess all over again. So you have to make sure that that is all straight, and the general allowance is 4/1000ths of an inch. And I tested some copy paper I had at home with a micrometer, and it actually wound up being 4/1000ths of an inch thick. So I took a straight edge and I put the paper, and if it went under anywhere, then it was warped too far, and I had to get it machined. Thankfully, it wasn't. So as you can see in this previous slide, the valves were also crusty and gross. So I decided I have the head off, so I might as well take the time to get those proper so that everything runs smoothly when it's back together. So removing camshafts and lifter trays was the first step in that. It gives you a good look at the camshafts with the lobes. And the lifter trays are just in between the camshafts and the valves. It's what the camshafts actually push on to push down the valves. And there's all these kind of pistons, if you will. And when you pull them out, if you just pull them out, they'll fall at the bottom, which is a bad thing because you need to keep them in a specific order because they all have a specific wear pattern correlating to where they are in the engine, and you need to keep them together. So I used magnets so that it brought those pistons up with the tray. There we go. So that's just a look at the head without the lifter trays, and it's just valves and springs. And then I had to remove the valves. There's a specific kind of like hammer-like tool that I used, and then I would label them all exhaust, whether they were exhaust or intake, what cylinder they were, and what valve they were. So next I had cleaning the valves. Mr. Lee is kindly playing this video for me. I would put them in a drill press, and with a little bit of oil and a Scotch-Brite pad, I would just apply some light pressure, and that would really take away the residue and whatnot. So as you can see, and on the right is a look at what some of the worst valves look like on the underside. So this is some before and afters of doing that, and you can see it's still kind of pitted in places on the after, but it's definitely much better than it was before. So the next step, there we go. The next step was lapping and seating the valves. So because I had resurfaced basically those valves, I needed to resurface where they would sat so that they sealed properly. So there was a lapping compound, and you just put that around the edge of the valve, and there's a tool that was like a dowel with suction cups that you would spin it in, and it would kind of resurface that. And then I had a custom tool. I don't really have enough time to go into the specifics of how this works. I encourage one of you to ask me exactly what it does in the question section, that I can talk about that. Here's some videos. I would tighten it down, and I'm just going to skip that part anyways. So refinishing the block, before I put the head back on, you need to refinish all the surfaces so it makes everything's clean so that it seals properly. Otherwise, like I said, it'll be a giant mess. And the reassembly process was really smooth. It was basically just the reverse of the disassembly, but it happened in like a week. And so this is a video of me starting, and that about concludes it. A huge thanks to Mr. Lee, in-school mentor. He was really helpful, really good to see basically every day, and he's always there as a resource. And also Jeff Rittmeyer, my external mentor, super knowledgeable in this specific topic of German automotive engineering. Was definitely instrumental in that process. And now it's open for questions. Right in the back. Yeah, $900.
That's right. So how much did you put in by the timing and everything else? What tools did you use in order to do that?
Yeah, all right, so for those on the stream, the question was, how much did I put in after, the initial purchase? And all things considered, I probably put in about what the car costed. So, you know, all things considered, $1,800 for a car that, granted, probably doesn't have much life, 220,000 miles. You know, you can only go so far, but yeah, I'd probably say around $800-900. Lewis?
What process took you the longest?
I want to say when I was stuck at that exhaust stage, not because of like actual time I was putting in, but because I was just like stumped on what I could do. But if we're talking like what like actual like work in, was probably honestly the first round at taking off the intake manifold. I was just tired.
I noticed there was a custom tool.
Oh, thank you so much for asking. Hold on, get it back. Yeah, so as you can see, so basically there's keepers that attach the valve to the valve spring. So because, you know, the valve spring wants to go up and it needs to be attached to the valve to pull it up with it so that it can close. So there's like almost like a washer type thing that goes on the top of the spring. And then in this next video, you can see there's like teeth on the top of that valve, and I'm putting in these keepers, and that also have teeth. So those kind of, there's two of them, and they lock in around that top of the valve, and those kind of have an outward, upward slope to them, and then the washer on the top of the spring has like the reverse slope to them. So then, so I needed a way to push down that kind of washer at the top of the spring and keep the valve kind of like emerged and free, so that way I could put those keepers on, and then when I let go, when I undid those nuts that pushed it down, the spring would come back up, and then it would take the valve with it because of that kind of outward slope relationship, if that made sense. Mr. Shahan.
Two questions. One, was that an official mechanic's BMW water knife that you're using to set that?
No, that's a Greg Teegarden special.
Secondly, do you know what BMW stands for?
It's Bavarian Motor Works in German. Yeah. Melissa.
Okay, here's a more question. Did you ever think about messing with the gap setting on spark plugs to increase efficiency?
No. Melissa.
Are you driving this car around us? Is this your car?
No.
I've seen you in this.
Yeah, no. As you can imagine, a BMW with 250,000 miles has other issues that arose. I'm currently dealing with a fuel leak right now, so hopefully I can get on that after internships and after my schedule kind of opens up. Susan.
It seems like there are two parts to this project. There's doing all the work, but then there's how to know what to do.
Mhm.
So what did you come into this with? Did you know cars, or was this a huge learning curve to be able to do this?
I knew a good amount about just how they worked, but I gotta say thank you to this guy called the 50s Kid. He's a YouTuber who I guess specializes in E46. E46 is the generation 1999 through 2006. He just specializes in E46 maintenance. And so he had a video for every single thing that I did, like very in-depth video. So that was actually extremely helpful, and I was able to follow along. And of course, I ran into problems that he didn't, and he ran into problems that I didn't. But I think that was, I came into it with knowing how an engine worked and being interested, but not really knowing how to do any of this. So that was really helpful. And that looks like it's all for my time. So I'm going to invite up Amelia.
Okay. For my senior project, I wanted to work on a small business that was focusing on providing arts and crafts for young children. Okay. So I run a camp with my friends in the summer for a couple of years when we were younger, but mostly just for fun to, hang out in the summer for a couple weeks when we had a space, and we'd usually have about maybe 5 kids, and I think this is a picture of the first time we were mostly in charge, very lightly. It was very supervised, but, and it was just fun, and we always had a great time, and when COVID came around, this was not a possibility because there was absolutely no, hanging out together, especially in the spring of 2020, and even outside. So instead of not doing anything at all, we created a package kind of drop-off where the main thing that we often did at camp was arts and crafts for kids. So instead we created little packages and would drop them off to the kids who normally came to camp each year. And this was super fun for me and my friends, and we added stories, and we had a great time creating this. So when it came time for me to choose a senior project, I knew I wanted to work with this a bit more. Okay, so to start my senior project in 2021, okay, I think, sorry, COVID's dying down, and I was able to run the camp again, and we ran it for 2 weeks, and it was super exciting to be back outdoors with the kids in person, and I was super happy to be able to do this again. Okay, thanks. So this year, when I ran it, we had about 12 kids, which is super exciting. It's the max number that the space I often run the camp in it allows us to have. So it was super exciting that we were completely full, and that felt really good. And I had a great time working with a couple of my different friends over the 2 weeks that I got to run the camp. Here are some more photos. We did a lot of walks in the park, and we created it to be completely outdoors during the COVID pandemic. Arts and crafts was, because it was the theme of my project, I focused on it even more during camp. And we had different arts and crafts every day at the beginning of camp, and this really allowed me to get a sense of the different age abilities of the kids. I had kids from ages 2 to 9 at camp, and it was super helpful to see their different abilities with fine motor skills relating to arts and crafts. And this was the research part of my project. Here's one of the fun crafts we did. It was a kind of collaborative project, and I learned fairly quickly that this works really well for older kids and not so well for younger kids who definitely have a harder time sharing their space. Okay, so for the beginning of my senior project, I was on an exchange in Germany, so I kind of limited what I was able to do. But while I was in Germany, I wanted to create a website, so I worked on creating a website and advertising. So for my website, I used Squarespace, and it took a little bit of time to get used to working with Squarespace, but I was able to figure out how to send all the buttons to go where they needed to go. And I had a lot of fun putting in pictures and making an aesthetically pleasing website that I then sent out to people who I had connections with and posted on social media. And here's the website. So I had a place in the website you could look at subscriptions, and you can just go down a little bit. So here are the subscriptions, and I had different age groups, and I had a about page with bios for all the different people who I was working with, and they had the ability to donate subscriptions. And then I had a quick page about camp because I wanted to continue doing this at some point. And I also I created the website so it could, can I use this? Oh, there we go. Okay, so I wanted a button so people could subscribe, and so I also have the social medias here, but I wanted people to be able to subscribe on the website and not have to email me, and it was also just easier to have all this information in one place, so I created a subscription button, and I created a form. So for each person who subscribed to the packages, I would have all the same information and all in the same place. And we can, thank you, you can go back to the slide. Sometimes you have to exit it and then go back if you want to make it. Oh. Okay. Okay, it's there. I can work with it like that. Okay. Okay. Also, while I was in Germany, I met with my outside of school mentor every couple of weeks on Zoom to work on advertising and my website. She helped me a lot with wording, for inclusive wording. That was very important, that I wanted that to be a part of my website, and she was very up to date on that. She also helped me really focus exactly how much advertising I was doing, because I was working alone during school and also doing all my college applications. Having too many people sign up was not a possibility for me. So I worked very carefully to make sure I advertised enough to have enough people to run my senior project, but not end up with an influx of people that I could not give packages to. So the packages were every week, and I made them mostly for the weekends because kids are usually in daycare or kindergarten during the week. And each package has 2 crafts and 2 stories and a set of instructions. And people could sign up for 1 week, 1 month, or 3 months, depending on how much they want to spend. The first week, I wanted to start off with something bigger and kind of just like set it off to a good start. So I did a full week, which was 5 packages and 5 stories. And during this time, I wanted to work on I took this time to introduce some indigenous stories, and I wanted to introduce that into my packages just to add some learning and give parents a resource for bridging these topics with younger children. So another thing I wanted to do with creating these packages was really make them look more professional. When I'd originally done them before, it was mostly just like in paper bags. I just put some craft supplies in. So I spent a lot of time curating them to look nice and professional. So I used these paper boxes, and I had tissue paper, and everything was set up with stickers and all coded. So I wrote, the boxes were aesthetically pleasing. I put stickers on them. The kids got their names, and it was very nice to it was a very curated package for each child. Here's an example of one of the packages and one of the crafts that we did. And here are some pictures that parents sent me of the different crafts that their kids were doing, which was super great to see. Here's another example, and this is a great example of when I had to curate the packages for the different age groups. Older kids are really good with needles and thread, whereas younger kids can't hold the needle at all in most cases. So for the younger kids, instead of giving them a needle and thread, I used pipe cleaners so they could thread the beads onto there and make necklaces out of that. Here are some more pictures that the parents sent me. They're always very proud of their kids' works, and I love to see all the different things they were doing each week. So I ended up doing donations, and this was an important part of my project for me, which I hadn't originally planned on. On the first week, I accidentally dropped 2 packages off at the wrong house. And this house ended up being a new neighbor immigrant family. And after doing that, I was like, after discovering that, I was like, I'm gonna drop packages off again when I end up in that area. So I was like, it's gonna be Christmas time, you know, winter, I'm gonna drop 2 more packages off. And I sat with this idea for a while, and I knew I was gonna do this, and I wanted to do more. Okay, and so I talked to Yarmouth Cares About Neighbors, and I was able, they said, yeah, we'll take 50 packages. We had 2 days, we made up 50 packages. My parents and my brother helped me, and we got all 50 packages done. I have made 75 more packages that I'm going to donate to Yarmouth Cares About Neighbors in the near future. And I'm running to the camp again this summer. And I want to say thank you to Miss Yo, my in-school mentor, for helping me stay on track and giving me creative ideas. Shiva, my outside of school mentor, my parents, my brother, Clancy, Sasha, and Muriel, who helped with the camp, and all the parents who participated to make this project possible, and also Yarmouth Cares About Neighbors for allowing me to do some donations. So, questions? Yes.
So are you still doing that? Do you still subscribe to these packages or no?
Okay, so for the online folks, it was if I'm still doing this right now. I did it for a total of 3 months, and at the moment, I'm no longer doing it. I might do it again at some point, but it is a very time-consuming project, and I would not be able to do in college, so not right now. Emma.
I'm just curious how you found out that the packages you dropped off were at the wrong house, and also how the people at the door responded and if they got the packages.
Okay, so the question was how I found out that who the people were who I dropped it off at the wrong house. When I found out that I hadn't dropped them off at the house they were supposed to go to, I asked this family, like, hey, did you get the packages? They was like, no, we didn't. And I was like, oh, we must have dropped them off at the wrong house. And they were like, people often drop our packages off at this other house. And we had, in fact, dropped them off there. And they were like, I can try and, go see if they have them, but they don't speak English. They're new neighbor immigrant families. Can I just give them to them because they have 2 children. I know they're going to love them. So I was like, of course, I'll bring you 2 new packages. It's super great that we dropped them off here. I never actually have gone to see this family. So I dropped them off at their house twice, and I know they get them because they come in from the door. But I've never actually gone to speak with this family, but yeah. Herr Shehan.
Warum oder haben Sie Interesse daran, die Webseite auf Deutsch zu schreiben und diese Kids an die Deutschen?
Okay, so Herr Shehan asked for everyone if I would be interested in making the website in German and creating this also for German kids to buy. And I think that would be super cool if I did that at some point. It would also be fairly difficult because I would have to not only read all the stories in English, but also in German. So that would be a bit more time consuming. Creating the instructions in German and doing that would be super easier. But it would be very difficult to ship to Germany. Any other questions? Oh, Herr Shehan. Yep.
You talked about wanting it being really important to have inclusive language in your website. Maybe we can talk a little bit about specifically what you want to do or how that came out,
Of course. So inclusive language. I had the option for people to donate on the website, and was probably the first problem I encountered with inclusive language was how to word donations. And in the end, I basically concluded that the simpler I make it, the easier it is. Because at first I was trying to word it, donate to a child in need or donate to an underprivileged child, and how it didn't really have a nice or inclusive way to say that, and it didn't feel exactly right. And in the end, I discovered that just saying donations was really the easiest way to go. The simpler I went with wording, the better it was. And there was lots of other problems, but that was just like the main one that I can remember. Okay, thank you. And I would like to invite Louis.
All right, hello everyone. My name's Louis, for those of you who don't know me. And my senior project is fishing and filming the waters of Maine. All right, so how I chose my project, it really started for my love of nature. I really wanted to interact with nature more and engulf myself in it. And then a plus was being next to the water in the summertime is really nice. And then also my new passion for fishing. Started fishing about a year ago. Didn't have much experience, didn't catch many fish, and so I wanted that to change. And then my previous interest in filmmaking, I'd watched a lot of ski films growing up. I was really interested in how they got the different shots, whether that was in a helicopter or in a car. That really intrigued me. And then when I started fishing about a year ago, I started watching fishing films and getting really interested in those. And then the last part is my previous experience in editing, where I would shoot all my own ski videos and edit them on more of a simple editing software called iMovie. And I really wanted to bring that to the next level too. And so my goals for my project were actually, so I wanted to catch fish. I know that sounds a little simple, but it's not as easy as it seems, which I found out pretty rough the first year. And then kind of following along with that is find local Maine fisheries. This was just for me to have in the future, keep it in my back pocket whenever I needed it, and just kind of create a good source for me whenever I wanted to go fishing or bring people fishing. And then the next part is learn how to film. So with this, I actually wanted to learn how to use my camera. I got this really fancy camera with a lot of settings. I wanted to figure out the best settings needed, how to get different shots, and all that jazz. And then next, I wanted to learn how to edit on Adobe. I wanted to kind of go a step up, like I said before, from my other editing software and really use more of a professional editing software, which is Adobe, which a lot of films are already made on. And then I think one of the most important things was bring to life this picture that I had in my head. When I started fishing the first year and then when internships rolled around, I already started picturing what my film would look like, and it was super important for me to bring that to life. And then finally was make a short film. I knew this would take a while, but that was my main goal, and so that's my goal to achieve. And I've made a trailer for you all to watch for this one, and my film will come out before the end of this month. And so one of the most important parts about my fishing journey is really how I chose my locations. As you can see, there are a lot on there. And I would say one of the biggest ones was an app called FishBrain. This is where you can see what people have caught, certain kinds of fish they would catch, what lures they used, the best bite times, and then what species were at each spot. And I would say the downside to this is it's a social media platform, so there can be false information on that, which then ties into my next one, which I hold is the most important one, which is going out and talking to local fishermen and getting yourself involved in the fishing scene. So what I would do is every day after work, I'd go visit my friend Paul. He would give me tips on spots, what fish to catch in which places, even though some of them he was a little secretive about because he didn't want me hogging all of his fish. And then the last and probably the most least important one is social media, just staying up to date on fishing accounts and seeing where they catch fish and what lures they used. Next slide. So the species of fish I targeted, I went into it targeting largemouth bass, striped bass, and brook trout, and quickly learned that, at least for me, largemouth bass and striped bass were the hardest to catch. So then I ended up targeting a greater audience of largemouth bass, smallmouth bass, striped bass, pike, and brook trout. And then going back to the previous slide, In each location, up in the north, up in Baxter State Park is where I would catch all the brook trout, and in Eustis in the Rapid River. Moving more inland to Freeport, Auburn, Augusta area is where I would fish for smallmouth, pike, and largemouth bass, a lot in the Androscoggin. And then going more coastal towards Fort Popham, Saco, and Cape Cod is where I tried catching striped bass. And so here's a picture of each of the fish on the list. The middle one is a pike, as you can see right there. This is a brook trout, a little brookie caught up in Baxter State Park. This is one of only 2 stripers I caught. This is a smallmouth bass, and this is a largemouth bass. So the fishing gear I used, as you can see on the left, everything's unpacked there. You have soft plastics at the top and then harder lures down below with all the equipment on the right in case something breaks. And then as you can see, it becomes more compact there and into a bag there. And especially for the places I was fishing, I was always fishing for the unexpected. So packing for the unexpected was super important. Next is the camera gear I used. I used a Sony a7 III with a gimbal. And as you can see over here, the gimbal paired with the camera creates really stable shots, and it allowed me to get low or high, and just really allowed me to get high quality images. And then the GoPro for underwater shots, which I ended up not using much because fish are really fast and they're actually harder than I thought to film. And so, moving on to a little bit about the editing. So, everything was completely new for me. It looks really complicated at first, and YouTube was a big help. Almost all the questions I had were on YouTube, but there's pretty much 4 little squares, and once you know those, you get to familiarize yourself with the software. And so on the left is where you import all your images and videos, and then you drag it up to the upper left-hand corner right there, and that's where you edit the length down. And then you drag it down here to the timeline, and this is where you can add all the special effects, like audio, graphics, color grading, and all that good stuff. And then this screen is whenever you want to play your full film and see how it's come out. And so now here is a trailer I made for my film, and I hope you like it. Yeah, so there's kind of a quick trailer. And so, to wrap things up, some closing thoughts and thank yous. All right, so I think as far as takeaways go, my biggest takeaway was coping with the fact that fishing's actually really hard, and sometimes you don't always go out catching fish. But for me, it was about the experience as a whole and kind of appreciating the entire fishing experience, being surrounded by nature, listening to the sounds of the river, just everything as a whole. And I think that was really good for me during the summer. And then also, I came to know that the size of the fish doesn't matter. And I don't know, it was kind of an interesting piece for me because all the brook trout were super small, but really beautiful. And then as far as editing goes, I think going into it, not being familiar with it, but thinking that I would, was a mistake because it was actually super complicated. But that kind of ties into my next point of, I feel that now that I've learned Adobe, I can see that I've only really touched the top of the iceberg. And there's really so much more to learn about it. And I'm super excited that I was able to kind of breach into this world and that I will use it for maybe further jobs in the future. And I forgot to mention patience too is also key to fishing because you can go 2 hours without getting any bites and then boom, 7 o'clock hits and it's the best fishing of your life for 2 more hours. I'd like to give a big thank you to Miss Flaff, my in-school mentor, for listening to all my practice presentations and helping me tweak my film. And as some of you might know, Robert Pennington, or Mr. Pennington, was our 1st to 4th grade teacher. He's also making a film right now, and we would go on call, and he would help me edit my film, give me tips and suggestions, super helpful. And then my friends, of course, for coming out and fishing with me and helping me film. And my family, especially my dad, for teaching me how to fly fish and taking me to all these remote spots and just keeping up with me on this little journey. So yeah, that's my presentation. All right, questions? Sam?
Where were some of your favorite spots, like both fishing and filming?
All right, so the question was, where are my favorite spots fishing and filming? I would say my favorite is up in Baxter State Park. There was a lot of remote creeks, and I really had the most joy fishing there. I learned how to fly fish. The fish were super beautiful. It was a nice walk in every location. Sometimes it was a 2-mile walk, but just really beautiful area, and I found that it was the best for filming too, so yeah. Susan?
How did you balance the, you can't fish and film at the same time? You obviously had your friends and you had your dad, but was that a real decision, or were they doing some of the filming when you were fishing, or how did you sort that out?
Yeah, so the question was, how did I balance fishing and filming? And so sometimes I would just feel like I wanted to go out and fish with my friends, but other times when I realized I had to film, I would kind of plan ahead and bring all my gear and make sure the weather was right, because if it's raining, you can't film with super expensive camera gear. So yeah, I would have to plan each time when I was going to film, and especially up to Baxter, I knew that was a time for me to film, so I would bring all my stuff up to Baxter. But a lot of the local places, I would just go fishing by myself without any camera gear. So a lot of planning ahead went into each time I would bring my gear with me. Yeah.
Have you ever tried York River stripers?
I have not.
Very good spot.
All right, I'll have to try it out. Yeah, Greg?
On the audio, first, what's the bird that opens up the sequence?
It's actually an ambient sound that I added to it.
And second, why such ominous music?
Yeah. So the question is, why such ominous music? I found it at first, and I thought it was really cool, and it just kind of helped build up the trailer, and I guess I was kind of going off like a movie trailer theme, and it was kind of like, I kind of like the cool classical music build-up, so yeah, I chose that, but not super big reason. Avery?
There was a picture of a pike that you had on one of your slides. It looked pretty big, so I'm just curious if you could share more about that catch.
Yeah, so the question was asking about the pike, which was the big fish in the middle of the picture. So it was 42 inches long, and it was about 10 pounds. And pike are really gnarly creatures. They have big teeth, and they require some really long tweezers to get in, which luckily we had that day. But it probably took me about 5 to 10 minutes just to reel the fish in. And yeah, I was caught in the Androscoggin. I wasn't expecting to catch a pike. I was actually going for smallmouth, and then this thing hooked up. And it required my friend to jump on it before it swam away and kind of wrestle it. So yeah, that's definitely the biggest fish I've ever caught. Mr. Barham?
Is it all catch and release, or do you also cook some of these things, and is that an interest of yours? Or?
Yeah, the question was, are all of them catch and release? All the ones in here are catch and release. Actually, I think all the fish I caught were catch and release. If I'd caught in some bigger stripers that were within the length, I probably would have eaten a couple of them because I heard they're really good. But yeah, everything in here is catch and release. Miss Welch, sorry.
Do you see yourself entering any contest in the future, like the Dance Mountain Film Festival? And if so, do you think we should get your autograph now?
So the question...
But seriously, is that a goal you have for one of your films someday?
Yeah, so the question is, do I want to get my films to Banff film festivals and other festivals like that? That would be awesome, and I think I really could. It takes a really long time to edit a film, and so just doing this trailer took me like tens of hours. And so I think once I'm done with my main film, I'll see how it is. And if I really liked it, I can see myself doing more of that as kind of a side hobby and entering in some films. So yeah. All right, so I'm out for questions. Thank you. I'd like to invite Avery Jean to the stage.
Okay, great to be up here. So, my name is Avery Jean, and for my senior project, I did automotive videography, and towards the end of the presentation, I'll be talking a little bit about the importance of sticking with it and what I learned throughout this process. So, before we get all into it, most of the slides are pictures of my work. So if you're wondering who took the photos or things like that, it's me. And yeah, so I hope you like some of them. Anyway, so let's start off with what I did. And to fully explain that, I'll have to go back to where my interest for cars started. And really, I can't remember where it exactly started. I've always had a love and appreciation for the engineering behind the automotive industry. But it really took off when I went to my first car meet towards the beginning of the summer. So I had some friends who were involved with the car scene, but I had never been myself. And one weekend they invited me. We went down to Westbrook to a Cars and Coffee, and it was an absolute blast. I loved every second of it. And from that point forward, I got really into to actually attending these car shows, these car events, and things like that. But a key point about attending these meets is just as important to me as seeing the cars in person was talking to the people behind the cars, the owners of the builds and everything. There's always a story behind a car at these events, and the conversations I have with people talking about their cars are incredible almost all the time because they mean a lot to a lot of people, and it's a great thing to see in person. So moving on. So thinking of my senior project, I knew I wanted to do something car-related or related in some way to the automotive industry. And so the first idea I had was automotive journalism. And my original view for how that would go is, hopefully I'd ask my friends and family first if they would, lend me their car, and hopefully I'd be able to drive them around and then make a review of them, either in a video format or a written format. But as you probably know, it's not a lot of people are too fond of giving the keys to a 17 or 18-year-old and having them take the car for a day. And then, talk about it. So quickly I realized it probably wouldn't be the best bet. And later on, I decided for myself that that journalism, like true journalism, really wasn't what I wanted to do. I didn't really want to sit at my computer and write a lot. Growing up, I read a lot of car reviews in the magazines, and I just wasn't a huge fan of that. Instead, I really wanted to get my hands dirty and focus on experiencing these cars in person, and then presenting them in a way that I feel would be best. So eventually, I decided on automotive videography and photography for my senior project. So getting into it, how I did it. Well, I traveled to as many car meets, car events, car shows as I possibly could, and I brought my DSLR with me, and I started taking as many photos as I could. I wanted to gain as much experience, at the beginning stages as I could, and get a little portfolio started. So, and with that, every weekend I would go down to Saco, South Portland, and even take trips down to New Hampshire to Fox Run Mall. There's a show that's called Seacoast Cars and Coffee that they put on. It's a huge venue, like thousands of people go. It's awesome. But yeah, so I went to these car meets. I took a bunch of photos. I'll show some in particular ones, some of my favorites. This is one of my favorite interior shots. It's of a 2012 BMW 335i. If you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. This one was really special, the car itself, and I got the opportunity to do a showcase on that, and I'll get into that in a few moments. But the reason I like this photo so much is the lighting. I don't know exactly what time it was, but the way the lighting comes on, or comes into the cabin, and it sort of bounces off everything right at the right places. So I don't know, that's a personal fave. And then this is a really cool one. That's my old car. It's a Volkswagen Golf All-Track. And this is the first light pan shot I ever got to do. I wish I did more, and I probably will do more. But basically, everything has to be dark, so we did this at night. And we had a really long exposure, like 30 seconds. And I basically took three of my friends' phones, turned their cameras on, and I walked around the car, shining the light at the camera, and it does this really cool effect. It looks like a lightning bolt or something, and you get it illuminated off the car, and that was just a blast to do. These two pictures aren't necessarily incredible themselves, but they're really important to me. The one on the left, that's of a Trans Am, a beautiful example, and it's one of my first photographs that I was really proud of. It also happened at one of my, the first car meets I went to. And on the right was taken at Volkswagen Auto Group Fair, which is a car event in Topsom during the summer. And I don't know what about that photo exactly. I really like it. I really like so much about it. But I really enjoyed that show. That's among my top. So that gets a special place. So the showcase. So the idea for a showcase, it came out of a conversation with a good friend of mine, Mark West, who I met at a car event earlier in the summer. Basically, I didn't just want to shoot the car, I didn't just want to write about it. I wanted some in-between thing. So I came up with a showcase. And what it is it's a collection of photos, or a selection of photos from a photo shoot I'll do with a car. And with it, I'll make a 100 to 200 word write-up, as I call it, about the car, some key facts, some history behind it, anything important that I think the reader should know. And I'll do those either in photo format like these, or I'll do a video format, which I have one to show for you guys. And actually, I'll do that now. So this is my first video showcase, and this is of a 2012 B8 Audi S4. as that. Thank you. So I had done a few showcases at this point, and I had to find a way of getting it out there. And originally when I started taking my photos, I'd get as many as I can, and I'd just throw them out on social media. Because I found out everybody loves a picture of their car, especially if it's free. So I'd send those, and it wasn't too difficult to find the owners and to make more connections. That was awesome. But as I started to improve my work, I had to figure out ways to show to show them off. So I created a website called Gene Drives, where I would put, which is actually a blog, and I'd post these showcases to. And I also started an Instagram where I do the same thing, and also word of mouth by attending all of these car meets. I was able to talk to a bunch of people and share the word, basically. Yeah, perfect. So this brings me to what I learned, which is a lot. And so I think I have 4 key points. First off, I got a better understanding and sense of Maine's car scene and car community. But not only that, I also gained a better sense of the overall community in South Portland and Southern Maine. And that was an experience that I hadn't had the pleasure of going through, and I'm really grateful that I had the opportunity to talk to such awesome people and explore something that I love while doing so. I made great connections and long-lasting friendships with the people involved. And I learned to be okay with something not coming out entirely like what I had hoped, which is a big thing. But by far the biggest challenge I had with this project was sticking with it. If you know me well, you know I'm an incredibly indecisive person. And throughout this whole project, there were a lot of points where I wanted to switch, I wanted to do something else. But luckily I had Mr. Reinhardt to keep me on track, and as well as my parents. Their awesome encouragement helped me stay at it. And I learned that when I really focused and when I focused in, I kept up with my work, that's when I really saw results, and that's when the real returns came in. And I'm really grateful I learned such an important lesson in the process. So if you walk away from one thing from this presentation, it would be to stick with it. That would be, yeah. And then some thank yous. So I want to thank Sharon Peavy, my external mentor. I took her photography class, and that truly helped me focus, not only build upon the basics of photography, but to work on the finished product, and allowed me to go think deeper and to really go into to how to craft a photo, which proved to be incredibly beneficial. And I also want to thank Mr. Reinhardt for the work he put in, helping me with my presentation and my project. I want to give a huge shout out to Lewis Walker. He lended me his camera setup, and I wouldn't have been able to do my video showcases without him. So I thank you, Lewis Walker. I want to give a big thanks to my mom and dad, my brother, and also Mr. Lytle for always checking in with me, making sure I'm getting my work done. So that's good. Okay. Questions? Anybody? Angus.
Will you continue to showcase cars and just continue on with this?
Absolutely. Car season is just starting up again, and I've already made my way to a few season openers. I've got some work, and yeah, I really hope to continue it. It's something I really enjoy doing.
Sort of bouncing off of that, do you plan on making a career out of this?
Out of strictly car photography, probably not. although something in the car industry would be pretty sweet. And car photography is not only just recreational purposes like what I explored, but it's also used widely used in marketing and just all over the place, in all the nooks and crannies in the car industry. Ms. Flath.
I'm curious if you have an assessment in this experience. Is it the design of the car itself that makes the car beautiful? Or is it the eye behind the lens that makes it look awesome? I only had this vision, perhaps you could make your teachers' cars in this fake film in a similar way. Would our cars look that great?
Perhaps it's a combination. So the question was, is making a car look good purely based off of the looks of the car, or can with photography work, is it possible to make any car look good? And to that I say it's perhaps a combination. Not everybody shares the same tastes of cars, of course. And given the right lighting and the right setting, I could probably make something look pretty nice, but okay. Maybe I do the whole faculty parking lot, a whole shoot. That'd be awesome. Mr. Cheyenne?
So a lot of these cars that you show us are not actually street legal, right? They have modifications that make them, despite their sensible inspection and legality and stickers, not. Did you run into anybody who was like, don't make sure you don't get my license plate in with this thing, so it can be clearly show that it's dragging, or that this might be on this.
So the question was, did I run into anybody who didn't want me to show their license plate because of legalities, concerning modifications? And the question is no. The answer is no. I luckily didn't. Maine's car regulations, as for modifications goes, are kind of lenient compared to that of other states. But no, I didn't run into any trouble with the law. So that's always good. Or with yeah. Sure. Ms. Welch? Okay, maybe. I have not. This is a brand new idea, and perhaps something I talked to Chris about, maybe. The question was, have I ever thought of collaborating with Chris Kasparak on maybe showcasing one of the school vans? So possibly. Louis?
What was your favorite car that you showcased?
My favorite car that I showcased, that's tough, but I'm probably going to give it to, it's a 2013 Audi TTRS. I don't have photos of it in the slides, unfortunately, but that's actually my friend Mark West's car, and he was one of the first people I met at a car meet, and his car was special because it's one of 32. It has a huge history, and the car, Audi actually messed up on the color of the car when it was ordered, and they did that to 32 cars in the entire world. So I had the pleasure and great opportunity to showcase that, and it was also my first showcase, so that has a special place. Yes.
Were you doing your showcase on a test track somewhere that was off-street?
Yes. That was, so it was at the, that one in particular was at the Brunswick base, but I was able to go to a remote section, and where I could be safe and responsible while shooting these. And I'm getting the red folder, so that's all for me today. I'm going to welcome up Faith Robillard.
All right, so, oh yeah, thank you. I have some quick stuff I have to set up really quickly, so feel free to talk amongst yourself for the next like 20, 30 seconds. I'll be right back. Or not, whatever you fancy. Hopefully your conversations were lively. Hi, Dad. So my senior project, I'm Faith Robillard, for anyone who doesn't know. My senior project was the thoughts and processes while building an electric guitar. My in-school mentor was Mr. Barham, and I had two external mentors, Kevin Curry from New York, and my own grandfather, George Rubino, who's sitting right there. And they're both professional musicians and luthiers in bow making. And I'm super grateful that I was able to work with them and that I have them as resources. And thanks to my grandfather for letting me chill out in his basement for the last couple months. So my goals for this project, pretty straightforward. Just to finish making a guitar. I'll get into more why I say the word finish. In the next slide, learn a little bit about the guitar and kind of what it is like to play it. I hadn't previously played it before. And to really understand the techniques and tools and the craft behind constructing an instrument. It's not an easy process, and it's really quite interesting when you get down to it. And then just have fun with it. You know, you gotta have a good time. So what I meant by finish was I had previously built the body of the guitar at UNH with the UNH Violin Craftsman Institute because both of my grandparents work there in the summer, as well as my mentor Kevin. They teach various different classes in bow making, and they had a new class one summer of constructing an electric guitar and repairing. So I was grateful to have the opportunity to join that class for, I believe it was a week or two long. It was pretty short. So I ended up with pretty bare bones. Technically there were strings on it. I wouldn't really call it playable, but it looked like a guitar. It could pass as a guitar. So the body wood right here is Goncalo alves, which is native to South America, and then ebony for the front of the headstock, and then the fretboard, which is native to southern India and Africa. And so here are some images of me in the early stages back when I was a freshman at UNH, and I had designed the shape of the headstock. I just sketched it onto some, like, I think it was like a lunch bag in the dorm I was staying in with my grandmother, and I went with it, and I still love it to this day. I'm super happy that I still like it, because pretty likely that I wouldn't now. And so here's some more, the design I put at the bottom of the fretboard and the truss rod cover on the headstock as well. And I kind of wanted to maintain like the little tip point of all three of those. So the first step that I had to really do when I took it out of the case a couple months back was to remove whatever hardware was previously on there from UNH. I immediately ran into the roadblock of the electronics previously being soldered in that I couldn't remove unless I completely wanted to start all over, which just didn't make sense to do since they were already in there. So I worked around that, which is why you'll see different pegs and screws hanging out of the next couple of slides. So just taking everything off, and I just have some videos of me just removing some parts, and just very, very tiny little screws throughout the process. So the first really big step was sanding down the neck. When I had first opened it out of the case, it was very thick. I really couldn't put my hand around it. You couldn't really play many chords, really, unless you had like huge hands, which I don't. So I used, Kevin gave me a book that had this template for the shape of the neck. And instead of buying one, I used parchment paper and traced over it and made my own. And I would go through a couple passes with different rasps, files, and automotive finishing papers. I emphasize automotive because they are a different type of finishing paper, and they're typically a little more finer and just nicer with this kind of stuff, because it's used for cars. And so I do a couple passes, and then I measure. A couple passes, measure. Over and over and over and over again for several hours at a time. It is very time consuming. And my grandfather had a great technique of using chalk, so you could actually see where you were sanding when you each pass, so you wouldn't go too far into one spot. So, oh no, it won't play. Okay, it was oh yeah, just press play. Okay, so I started by sanding down every square millimeter of this instrument. I used the same automotive finishing papers, starting at 300 grit all the way up to 1,000. And in the beginning, you could see me erasing some pencil marks that had previously been there from when different drills were, from different holes being drilled. And I went through and I just sanded everything the best that I could. This involved an insane amount of attention to detail, which I often missed, which my grandfather had to help me in because I kind of had to pick up that skill. It's definitely a long process, but very rewarding in the end. So the next super rewarding part was adding the oil to the body everywhere. I had used Danish oil for the body, neck, and headstock, and then I used mineral oil that I still haven't given back to Miss Flath, that is on the fretboard. My grandfather and I, we had thought of a couple different ways of coming up with a rig to hang it, or how I wanted to oil it, if I wanted to do one side at a time, but it made more sense to just do it all at once. So he found this wire in his garage and just a nice bolt, and we put it through one of the tuning holes at the top of the headstock. And this thing was more than secure. This thing weighs a ton, so I was kind of concerned it wouldn't hold, but trust me, I could have probably swung on it. It would have been fine. All right. And so adding the hardware back on, this was another part that was super fun for me because it made me feel like it was really becoming an instrument that I could play. So in this video, I'm trying a variety of different drill bits to make sure I drill the correct hole for the screw for the guitar strap pegs, because if you don't drill it the right size or it's crooked, you're gonna get a crooked peg, which I didn't want. I would have been pretty disappointed, and you can't really re-drill the hole. So that took quite a bit of time, but it was totally worth it in the long run because you get a straight peg. And so just some quick challenges that I had encountered was, again, like the rig that we had set up. We had gone back and forth about different methods that would be the best to suit what I wanted to accomplish and what type of oil I wanted to use, the time that the oils would take to soak in, and just what that was. So that took a little bit of contemplation, but happy with the way it turned out. Another really huge challenge was the volume and tone knobs that were on there from UNH. What I soon found out was I think the industry standard is like this ridged looking knob that has this big hole in the middle, where if you buy knobs off of Amazon or anywhere online, they're gonna fit. However, me being me, didn't have that. So I had these really much taller and smooth pegs, which were quite unfortunate, and I really couldn't find anything online that I could buy that was, one, looked good, they were all pretty ugly, and then two, that would even work in the first place. I couldn't really find any that would actually work. But luckily, Kevin Curry helped out, and he actually sent some in the mail from New York that actually fit perfectly. It was the best feeling in the world when those actually went on, because I was kind of just like praying that they would. So that was definitely like a hiccup. That was maybe like a week and a half ago, so I was kind of worried. And so again, like I said before, when it comes to the sanding, kind of a big challenge was just find the difference between what my eyes are seeing and what my fingertips are feeling, because a huge part of sanding any kind of wood or any instrument or any fine kind of material, a lot of the imperfections you can't see with your eyes. You have to kind of just pass over like again and again and again. And I'd often find myself just closing my eyes and just passing over the wood until I could find something. And then once I did, it was blatantly obvious, and I had to fix it. But it's a blessing and a curse, because I would find myself fixing it too much, and then I'd have to fix something else because I then messed it up somehow. So it's definitely like the challenge against the different senses that that I have. So some general thoughts that I had, like I just said, how my eyes have kind of adjusted to see different perspectives of the wood, and really I got to learn this wood very well over the course of the last couple of months. And just really, like my grandfather had often explained, like the more you look, the more you see, which is kind of sad, because the more I could stare at that for hours, and I could probably find what I need to fix here and there, when in reality I don't need to. So that was definitely something interesting that I learned about myself throughout this process. and not settling for each step. I definitely could have stopped sanding a long time ago and a couple hours ago, but I didn't. It was well worth the extra time and energy to put in for the sanding, because it did, when the oil was added, it makes a ton of difference, because if I had big scratches or anything, they would have been blatantly obvious, and it wouldn't have lived up to my expectations that I wanted to live up to. And having a ton of patience. This is a very time-consuming process and a very tedious process. And I'm somebody who really likes instant gratification, so I kind of had to work with myself on that. But yeah, it's with each coat of oil, I had to wait like half an hour, and then I have to come back the next day and do more, or it took probably about 10 to 15 hours for just sanding the neck down. So you kind of got to work with yourself and have the patience to really go through it. And then always call Kevin. When in doubt, always call Kevin. He knew everything. Any issue that I ever had, he had an answer for it. Even if they're the most absurd questions that I didn't think anyone could answer, he always knew it. And I'm very grateful for Kevin. And then just being a student to family. It's difficult kind of at first to like be a student to family members, because I had the tendency to like goof around. But I was really trying to be studious about that and really take in the information and the content that they were giving to me. So I kind of, you can leave it on that slide, Conrad. So, or not. So I, unbeknownst to my family, wrote sing, but I am right now for some reason. So, assuming that I can get this down. Sorry, Chris. Sorry about that. Just take out of my tuition. It's fine. Okay, we're gonna call that close enough, probably. Nope, she doesn't hum. All right, and my neon green capo. All right, well, that's right front and center. All right, yeah, it's a little high, but it should be fine. Yeah, I just whipped this up the other night in my bedroom for whatever. So yeah. You might not remember this because it is just a project, and your kid probably did one too, but I just made an instrument that I can barely play. Oh God, I kind of messed it up at the end, but we're gonna ignore it. All right, quest. Oh God, don't fall now. Oh no. Oh shoot. Oh shoot. Oh. All right. Questions. Well, I move this over. Sam. Unlike some of my classmates like Avery Jean, I cannot write songs very well or easily, so probably never, but if I get around to it, hopefully I can. Melissa?
So, the sanding process, after you oil it, can you not go back in and sand it?
Correct. Yeah, correct, yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, like worst case, like if I found like a drastic imperfection, I could have gone back and altered it, but I would have entailed me re-oiling it, which is kind of a little bit of a tedious process, so I did not end up going back and sanding afterwards. Mr. Shahan?
So the musician St. Vincent's made waves in the industry because she is advocating for guitar designs that are specifically useful for women. Is there anything in your design that is particularly aware of the difference between men's and women's bodies? Or did you design it for yourself in a way that, say, a man's guitar designed by a man would be different?
I'm actually glad you asked that question because when I had originally created the headstock design at UNH, one of my classmates had told me that I can actually sell my design to that company and they can actually produce and manufacture guitars with that, and I would get a portion of it, but I really decided to just keep it for myself because it's the only one in the world that's like it, and I really want to cherish that. And in the process, I was not thinking, is it a female guitar, male guitar? I wasn't really focused on that, but I really just wanted it to be unique to me, I guess. Greg?
The form kind of looks like a Les Paul
Yep.
Junior. That's the template of that.
Yes, yeah.
And you were aware that that is the iconic punk rock guitar.
Yeah, 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 very much so. I love it, I love it. Anyone else? Yes, Gagu. Yeah. Mhm. Oh yeah, it was. There was nothing more painful than waking up at like 5 a.m. after staying up late. Yeah, I wanted to give up several times throughout this, but luckily I had you and Pop to help me, just keep going and stay on that path. I meant to emphasize this earlier too. A lot of the intricate like cuts of the guitar and headstock and bottom of the fretboard, I didn't cut myself because I was younger and I probably shouldn't be using a saw then. So I had my instructor, Chuck Sanzone, had cut those for me at the time. Just so you know, I didn't do this myself. Avery.
Does this make you want to continue to build instruments, other instruments?
I just realized I haven't been reiterating the questions for the people on the stream. Avery's question was, do I think I'm going to continue instrument making? And I think so. If I have time in my free time when I'm older, I think it's a great way to pass the time, and it's really interesting. It's really rewarding too. I have a little really beaten up ukulele at home that I had bought new strings and tuners for. So that was a really fun side project to do. That was originally part of my main project, but I didn't feel it was really part of it. So yeah, or even just like repairing, I think is pretty cool, as it is. All right, I'm getting the red folder from Mr. Lyle in the back. All right, I'm gonna mug him up. Thatcher.
All right. Oh, look at that. Good evening, everybody. I'll just wait a little bit for Connor to get that sorted. All right, so my name's Thatcher Steele-Maley, and I chose to do woodworking for my senior project. My title is Concept, Creation, Culmination, and I feel like those three words sort of accurately represent like what an individual woodworking project takes. You start with your concept, get to creating, and then you wrap it up. And so that was what I went through a few times, including with this project here. So I wasn't exactly new to woodworking when I started out my project. We moved to Edgecombe, which is like 40 minutes up the coast, in 2008, and the house always had something to fix here and there. It's a pretty old house, so there's always an improvement to do. So I was swinging around hammers for a while, but only in the past few years did I actually start building furniture. I started outside with Adirondack chairs, benches, and then recently, past year or so, past couple of years I guess, moved inside, started with interior furniture like this pantry cabinet that I built, and it filled up pretty quickly. We were in need. And that so from my experience, I thought, might as well keep going with my senior project. So you can see I've got a list of I guess you could say, what I had planned. There are 4 in bold, which are the ones that I actually told the school, yeah, this is what I'm going to go for. But I had sort of secretly been thinking maybe I'd make it all the way down to miscellaneous decorative pieces, whatever that meant. You know, I thought I could just run through that entire list and it would just be easy. And I chose my bedroom as my spot in the house to make furniture for. You can see right there, I don't know how to do the laser, I'm sorry. I've got an old metal bed, and that was squeaky, you know, I wanted to replace it. It's a family heirloom, so it's important we still have it around, but I wanted to replace it. That desk was a freebie from the side of the road. Everything worked, but I wanted to make some furniture of my own to make my room a bit more of a livable space. But I'll get into why I just got to those 4 in bold here. So you can see on the top I got my expectations. I don't know if you can read what's in green, but the first block is projects 1 and 2. I thought I could finish my first 2 projects before the start of this school year. The next 2 projects really by, you know, late November, Thanksgiving time, and anything else would have been extra, you know, to get to those miscellaneous decorative pieces. But the reality was the bottom. So I started a little later than summer. I mean, I started at the end of summer with the dresser that I built, and that took about a month. Finished it right before school started. The bed followed, then the desk, and the chair finally, which I actually just finished in early March. And everything just took a little longer than I expected. There was a lot more planning, a lot more thought that had to go into things, scrapping ideas, restarting. And school was a big part of that. I hadn't really factored in exactly what the senior year would, you know, take. We had college applications, a lot of work, and I just had to fit in my senior project where I could, which was a bit difficult. So the process for each individual project was sort of the 3 steps that are in my title. Started out with the concept. This was the planning. You know, you can see a few pictures of this notebook I have. I think I actually kept it from a school project or something. But that was drawing things, drawing different plans, cut lists, getting numbers, measurements, sometimes scrapping it all, starting over. That really took like as long as 4 weeks just to get my idea solidified or to give up with an idea and start cutting. And that was the next step, which was creation. For, you know, weeks 4 to 6, that's when things really started going. I could just cut and start making things, start putting stuff together, and that's really where the project, like each individual project would pick up. That's where I got reinvigorated. And then the culmination, I call it the culmination, I guess it's just like the wrapping up of each project, finishing, gluing things together, staining, you know. That was the last 2 weeks. It would drag on sometimes, but it sort of turned out, it was like almost an 8-week process for each project, which was way longer than I expected. But I don't know if I could have done it faster unless I was dedicating, you know, all my time to the projects. So the first one, the dresser. I'm gonna call it useful when used. I used a handful of different types of wood. Used oak, pine, poplar, oak plywood. Worked for about a month, as I said, right up until school started. And I used the natural shape of my room. I've got one slanted wall, so we had a sort of like cut off cubby space, and I was like, might as well pop it in there and save some space in the rest of my room. So you can see here, I think it turned out pretty nice. had to work with drawer slides, so it all worked. The drawers came out smoothly. Useful when used, because sometimes I just don't bother to put my clothes away, even though I spent a good amount of time on this project. But it's definitely nice to look at. The bed is the next project, over-engineered comfort. I used a ton of different types of wood: fir, pine, oak, maple plywood, cherry. Just a bit over a month for working on it. And when I say working time frame, that does not include the thought process, that first 4 weeks. Like, this is from first cut to like the last final picture I have of it. And I used a lot of different types of wood, but I also used a lot of wood in general. Like, it was just a bulky bed. So it was heavy. And you can see it came together. It looks heavy. But it's nice to sleep on. It's comfortable. Getting corners were probably my biggest problem with this project, because all those corners had to match up with specific angles, especially down near the base of the bed. That was a challenge, but it was fun to work on. I'd do it differently if I could, but we're past that. The desk, I like the desk a lot. Don't look too close is the title of this one. Just three types of wood: oak, plywood, maple, and oak. Little under a month for this one. You can see a couple of processes here. I got the different, I guess you'd call them modules, on either side of the desk. I'll show finished picture soon. Biggest problem I dealt with was wood warping. You can see there are 5 examples of how wood can warp. I probably dealt with all of them. Cupping wood was probably my biggest problem, though. The top right picture shows this the surface of the desk, and that was multiple pieces of wood put together side by side. And if you can see the cupped wood, if each piece was cupped, when you put them together, it only accentuates it. So the top is a little, it's a little rocky. If you put a pencil on one side, it might roll to the middle. But it came out nice enough. I think, I also, sort of like the dresser, I haven't used it too much, but it's got plenty of storage, a very nice spot to put things on when I come home. But yeah, that's the desk. Now the chair, brought it in right here. Call it delicate sitting. Use just one type of wood, just cherry. So it was actually kind of my simplest project out of the 4. It was also the shortest, under 20 days, which kind of impressed me when I look back at it, because I think it's my favorite project personally. And it felt really nice to work with the wood for this last project. I cut almost all of the pieces out of a single cherry board. And there's a cliche for artists that you can take a shape out of the medium that you're working with, and I honestly felt that for this. I could see the chair coming out of the wood that I was cutting, and that was pretty cool. Caning, I chose to do caning for the back and the base. You can see the in-process pictures on the bottom there. That was a brand new experience, but it was fun. And it turned out, you can see it right here too. That's it with the desk up in my room. It was a really good project. So, the good, the bad, and the ugly. This is my highs and lows. Why I'm glad I did this project. Why I wish I didn't do it also. So why I'm glad I did do it, I learned a ton. Made some great furniture, and learned to be okay with little mistakes, move on from things that don't really matter and I don't have control over. But I also sometimes wish I didn't do it, because woodworking was something that was always really, really fun for me, and I did it completely in my free time, but this put sort of a prescription on it, made it schoolwork almost, which was never something I wanted for woodworking. It's not that it's going to keep me from doing woodworking in the future, but I like doing it for myself, and sometimes it felt like a chore, which was something to deal with for sure. But I'm happy with what came out of it. So I'd like to thank Eric Ritter, my external mentor, Maine Coast Waldorf, obviously, for giving me the opportunity, and then Mr. Lytle kept me going, and especially in the past month worked really closely with me on the presentation and tidying things up. And then parents were benefactors for the projects, sounding boards also, listened to all my bad ideas until I had one good one. But yeah, that's really it. Any questions? Yeah.
What's the favorite food to work with, or if you have one?
Right, so the question is, what's my favorite wood to work with? And I think the wood that I use most and probably my favorite to work with is oak, red oak to be specific. It's a hardwood, so, you know, it's got character. It looks really nice, and you can do a lot with it. So, yeah. Lou?
Can you compete with Conrad's most trips in our
Oh, yeah, no. So the questions, do I think I compete with Conrad for the most trips to the hardware store? He made the outrageous claim that he went to the hardware store the most over the course of his project. I think I beat him, but yeah. Mr. Lytle.
Thatcher, come up with the design of those four pieces, like, were those all out of your mind, or do you, how do you come up with the ideas?
Right.
Like that chair, for instance, you got an angle on that back, you put other chairs, or?
So the questions about how I came up with the designs, pretty much all of them did come from me, at least the majority. I would always have some type of reference here or there. I would think about, you know, oh, I want a dresser. Then I'd type in Google dressers and look at pictures until I found something that appealed to me. But all the cuts and measurements really came from myself, a lot of trial and error. I even tried to do a little bit of trigonometry for this one to get an angle. It didn't really work, but it was worth a try. But yeah, came from me mostly, Mr. Shahan.
Can you nerd out for a second on like your favorite woodworking joints and joinery, and like what do you love, a pocket drill or like a pocket hole to fasten the angle or something?
Great question. You seem very knowledgeable about a lot of things. So this chair's probably got almost all the types of joints that I did. Maybe let's see what I can do. So under here you can see these are pocket holes. They're little screw holes in the wood that hold boards together like face to face, which is, it's almost like cheating, but it's not because it's easy and it works. And especially if you can hide it, it's really nice. And I think that's super useful. I used it in a lot of different projects, and it's nice to learn. I did do some real joinery up top. There's, you know, mortise and tenons and all that stuff. And I think, mortise and tenons are the cleanest joint you can do. It's really, really simple, really fun. Not very simple, actually, but yeah. Mike? Did the cost of different type of woods play a factor into which wood you built? Yeah, so cost is definitely a factor. Conrad mentioned yesterday that wood prices are really high right now. Any hardwood, like cherry, is going to be really expensive right now. Even softwoods are pretty expensive too. So anything where I needed structural work, like my first two projects, the bed or the dresser, I tried to use like 2x4s that we had laying around, cut them to size. That was Mr. Lytle's suggestion, which I'm very thankful for. So I saved money in using
some non-hardwoods, but yeah. Melissa.
The bed, Thatcher, did you make that like in a workshop in pieces so it could like be assembled in your bedroom, or did you like, because you said it was so heavy, I'm just curious how you got it into the room?
Yeah, no, that was built in my bedroom. So I cut the pieces. I didn't really have a workshop. I cut most of the pieces outside, and then I sort of staged it in my bedroom. So I took my bed out and plopped my mattress on the floor next to it, and then sort of built my bed right next to where I slept on the floor. But yeah, the bed was all built in the bedroom. Nope. All right, I'm at time, so thank you very much. Mr. Barham's coming on.
So that was just the clapping for Thatcher. Can we give one more round of applause to the entire class of 2022? An extraordinary range of projects. If you think about the 14 projects that we saw over these 2 nights, it's just an amazing variety. I was struck, and I just wanted to share, try to imagine now what each of these young people is going to take with them from these projects and from this experience out into the world. And what struck me was this commitment to endless learning. Each of them had to learn all of these different pieces in order to be able to do any of this. The fearlessness that you have to bring to trying something you've never done before or pushing something you've done. The willingness to fail and fail again and start again and fail again over and over, each in their own ways. This curiosity that they each spoke about materials or processes, the playfulness that we heard from each of them, right? Not letting yourself get so heavy about it. This commitment to beauty that we saw in all these different formats. The pride that they were willing to stand up here and show this idea that you can actually feel good about yourself, your work, and what you put out in the world. And this this commitment to dreaming big, right? So it feels like it's really an inspiration for us in the audience and being your teachers and your parents and your community members to see what you put forth and to feel so good about what you're going to take forward from all of this. So again, thank you all so much. And thank you all for coming. We really appreciate it.